time for another round of brandy. Candid conversations over cocktails about all things brand with your hosts, Reilly Newman and Scott Saunders, the brand developers behind Motif Brands.
Hello and welcome back to another round of brandy. Today, Scott and I are discussing perceived value and what that means for your business and how you can use it to help your audience fall even more in love with you. Let's get started.
Yeah, so I mean, at the core of what, we understand the word value, right? And perceived means it's how we are interpreting things. It's how we have a filter, right? It's our lens. It's those types of things. And so obviously you're talking about perceived value is may not be, could we say it's not going to be true? It could maybe not be true value.
Yep. Yeah.
In other words, it may be far from the truth.
Yeah. It reminds me of intrinsic value versus market value.
Okay.
Especially on the stock market, on Wall Street, the investors will look at a stock and get its intrinsic value, and that's where they're more about the fundamentals about the company and how much money it's making, what it's losing, and really being true to what that baseline is. And then the market value is, how the market perceives it. Are they willing to pay that much more for it? Are they willing to pay even less than the fundamental value? They don't think it's going to go anywhere. They think the company's going to die. Usually it can lead to kind of euphoria in the market. They start paying so much for these stocks that it just goes off the rails.
Yeah, and a lot of it becomes a very perceived value of a brand could be different for one person to the next.
Yeah,
it isn't necessarily it's not like a unified front that, oh, well, this brand has so much higher value, and so therefore the perceived value is so much greater than it is.
Yeah,
and it's universal across the board. Yeah,
and I think that's really true because I feel like if someone understands perceived value, they'll think of luxury brands right away, and go, oh wait, those brands are perceived so much higher and they're luxurious and all these things. But it's like, I know some people who wouldn't be caught dead wearing that, right? Just because they don't care.
Well, for instance, like if you were to just take, like, say the sweatshirt apparel sector, you could have a Hanes, heavyweight sweatshirt, and compare that to a Champion. Now, Champion right now is pretty trending. I mean, I've got young adult kids, and they're all into if they have sweats, they're Champion brand sweats. Champion's made a resurgence back from its but I would say therefore it's the materials probably come from the same overseas mills. Yeah. And everything else, right? They're just assembled and different labels attached. And I think that the Champion hoodie has a higher perceived brand value, and therefore they could probably get away with charging more, right? There's obviously higher demand, so that dictates price.
Yes, I think that's a good point, is looking at, like you said, the garments, probably same material, come from the same factory, come from the same boats crossing the sea, and that's really comes down to, kind of like as a business, you have real fundamental transactional value. What's, cost plus, essentially, of, okay, what was the cost of the goods, and then we mark it up a little. But perceived value is that next step where that's where you really add a lot of margin. You can add a lot of extra added value from the consumer standpoint because they don't see it. Someone buying that Champion sweatshirt or the Supreme sweatshirt, they don't see it just as, oh, that's just a hoodie. They're seeing it as so much more than that. They're seeing it much more. And that's kind of like we were saying before, is that perception, that intrinsic value of going, no, this will either make me look a certain way, or I really like this brand, or yes, it's trendy right now, I'll fit in, or whatever those things. And those are all added value. That how do you add that up? I mean, you can't, because it's all in the head of the buyer.
Yeah. It's interesting because you use use the stock market analogy, and it's kind of like, you think about it, it's like that, the value of a stock, right? The value of a company.
Yeah.
But if you put it, if that was a monetary value, right? Perceived brand value to me is more of an emotional.
Yeah.
The commodity is emotional.
Yep.
Okay. Let's think in terms of likes or hearts, right? It's social media platforms are all used to it, right? Liking it or hearting it. So because it always made me think of, okay, perceived value. It's like, well, you could have a negative. You could be in the negative.
Oh yeah.
Your brand, your service, your offering, whatever it is that is branded could have a negative perceived value of it. It's below market value.
Yep.
With emotional connectors and how the audience or the marketplace is wanting to receive the brand.
Yeah. And I feel like that's a good point, because it is that perception could actually tarnish the business, even like you said, below market value of, it's like a nice home in a bad neighborhood, where someone, if they don't want to live on that side of town, or there's a reputation of that neighborhood, then I don't care what materials your house is built with, like it's still going to get dragged down by the association and the proximity of what's going on in that perceived value of that neighborhood. And really, I think when we talk to a lot of businesses, it's like helping them understand, okay, that's great that your business it's creating value and it's meeting the demand of the market. But I always kind of go, what's beyond demand is desire. Is like, to go from business to brand, you need to address the desire of the market. Yeah. And that's really where that, like you said, that perceived value, that emotion, that love for someone that they have for a brand, and that desirability, that's the promised land.
Yeah. Yeah. When you talk about the perceived value of a brand, what would you say, how much percentage-wise is on the back of the brand to actually be implementing and controlling versus just factors, external of the brand?
Oh, versus like trends.
Yeah, like trends. And like you said, it's like that one house, no matter how many upgrades and improvisations you made to increase the value of your home, it is also impacted by everyone else, what's going on in that whole neighborhood. So that's outside of yourself. That's something you can control. But the brand can obviously control certain things to help boost its perceived value with its audience. And so what is that, 80-20?
Like the Pareto principle of like 20% of the input is going to make an 80% difference. And I feel like brand has that power. Brand is one of the strongest levers for a business. Another strong lever is price point and pricing strategy. But I feel like with brand, the amount that you can put into it can drastically change the business. And I think that, when we start considering ways a brand can do that, it comes down to knowing who you're selling to. And like we talked about in other episodes, it's like having that empathy and understanding, okay, what is actually going to be valuable beyond just the transaction, beyond just the fundamental, I'm providing this service or this product, I'm fulfilling my side of the bargain. Now, beyond that, this specific person that I'm selling to, that I'm servicing or marketing my product to, what are they going to perceive as valuable? Because like we were saying, it's like someone, they might want to wear the luxury good, or some of them might be like, I want to be caught dead in that. It's just like if you and I looked at a piece of art on the wall, you could be like, man, that's a great piece of art. And I could be like, I'm not into it. And then we go look at somewhere else and then it flip-flops. And it's just like, that's human. And so understanding who you're selling to, understanding your market, then that gives you a higher probability of being able to increase that perceived value.
And what aspect of your brand is truly relatable to the consumer, where there's, an actual self-actualization, right? They're seeing how they want to be perceived by others, and what brands help do that. They're super eco-friendly and they recycle, and they do, that they're maybe into electric vehicles, and I mean, whatever it is, right? Yeah. Solar and all these other things that they're buying into brands, they're buying into that lifestyle, and other people that they're more into, they're athletes, so they're super health conscious and athletic and or people that are into mountaineering, right? They want the most lightweight items, and I mean, they, the brands that they adhere to embody them, and that greatly impacts the perceived value, because and that's almost something that would be a good thing that's outside of like a trend, right? A trend can boost business, really big.
Look at Stanley,
but
the cups,
the
Stanley cups,
or
just like the trend, and then like those cups just got picked up in it and it took off.
So you have something like that, or you have something where the emotional connector that an audience has with your brand, that can grow, and that can go beyond whatever you can do. I mean, hypothetical, J.K. Rowling wrote the books, right? And they made the films, and that's what we've had for years. Now they're looking, but as far as that, there haven't been like an animated mini series and all these little spin-offs, right? Yes, we had Fantastical Beasts, but that's different, right? Yeah. I'm just talking about the core Harry Potter book series. But yet, so that brand has its presence in the market, but two people can enjoy it. One is a super fan, and the other is a fan, but not a super fan. The brand put out this. The brand's not doing anything more to reach the super fan. It's just it resonates more with the super fan in a way that there's some people where you're like, I mean, I love Star Wars, but there's some people like I don't have any Star Wars things in my home. In the office, yes, right. My little workspace, my creative little, pod. I've got all my geeky stuff, but at home, and I see pictures on the internet like literally like people have a giant Millennium Falcon sitting in their living room going, well, my wife would never go for that, So it's those types of things that for someone that they're super fans, right? That's that X factor thing but brands can work to try to tap into that. But that's an example of like perception. You can't get perceived value almost to this extreme.
Yeah, and it's like that je ne sais quoi, which is like the what is it? How do you quantify that when it is a qualitative asset? It's a qualitative measurement of something. Of going, no, this perception of how this makes me feel, why I do it, why it resonates with me. That's where you get the super fans. Because there's some people, those buy something, you go, well, why'd you get that? And it's just kind of like, I don't know, I like it. And then you would never buy that. But I think you're right, is that it's the super fans, when a brand can start really aligning with them, they're going to have some deviation of attracting those other people who are just, they might be into the brand a little, but they're not a super fan. But they'll get pulled in there with like kind of the gravity of it.
Yeah, yeah. I think, it's interesting because we talk about, I think some of the ones that, I think market sectors that have like overly exaggerated perceived value market where it's almost like it's to the point of like, there's no way. It would be, definitely the fashion industry, fashion trends, where one company can sell a $420 cotton, 100% cotton T-shirt.
Yeah.
Right. It's cotton. It's nothing. You know what I mean? Like in the end, yes, it might have a nice soft feel, but guess what? They've treated it with stuff.
It's not made of gold.
It's not. It's not that the labor and time that went into making that white T-shirt does not equate $420, right? So I think definitely, when you get into fashion,
but it's the logo on it. It's the little stitched right on the chest or on the sleeve.
I know it's brand attached to it. That's what's adding that perceived value. Different than, you have it like in the wine industry where you can have one bottle that sells for $80 and another one that can sell for $8,000. But it's different because it's not the same grape juice. That is a, that was a 40 case lot from a small little particular plot of land on, the south of Portugal that, had just the right things and on 200-year-old vines and all these other things that go into it to increase the value of it. But there's still increased value, yes, within even the wine industry is another one, but it's different because again, it's not apples to apples.
Yeah,
there's so much that goes into it.
But even like the sweater versus wine, it's interesting because it is like on either of those, you'd be like, well, who cares? At the bottom, like at the end of the day, you can still say, who cares? Well, and it's the people who care are the ones who wear it, and they go to the parties or they go to the dinners where they're around most of the people who do care too, right? So it's signaling because even I don't care how old the vines are or any of that. It's like that's all story and narrative, like we talked about in the last episode, and it's perception.
Yeah. Now you meant like pricing strategies. I mean, obviously that goes hand in hand with perceived value, right?
Yeah.
You've got supply, you've got demand, you've got materials, then you've got that X factor that can drive the price up, right? Is one the horse and one the cart? In other words, the price on the sticker price versus the actual cost and or in other words, does someone just double? They go, oh, well, I want to boost my perceived value of my product or my brand, the audience. So I'm just going to double the prices. Right. You mentioned pricing strategy, but like, are there some tips or things or some factors they should consider in adjusting their pricing comparative to their competitors and what the market's wanting to pay.
Yeah.
Right? If they're trying to increase the value, or simply, man, if someone comes along and they see $10, $30 for a product on the shelf, right? Automatically they go, well, geez, why is that one
something
so
different?
More, right?
Yep.
So, or is it, no, it's not that simple.
Pricing is, just as humans, like pricing plays a large role in signaling. So like you said, if we do see something that's like, man, that thing's like double the price as the other stuff on the market, it instantly makes you think, what's different about that? So it's a bit of a shortcut for that. But with that said, it's simple, but it's not easy, because you need to have something to back that up. And that really does come down to, again, the story, the narrative, those other things that you're signaling to the people who then go, oh, wow, I do buy into that. Like, again, Apple, it's like Apple's so their design language with their iPhones, with the interface, with everything about it, where then it resonates with the people who do, they go, I appreciate that. And oh, heck yeah, I'll pay more for that. And it, so the pricing does signal a lot, but you need to have something baked in there that's going to address that desirability for that certain audience. You can't just raise the price, because that's not going to do anything.
Yeah.
Except for maybe trick some people and leave a bad taste in their mouth.
Yeah.
And so I think it's, when you are doing that, if you do need to, it is a little bit of, you could have, the cart before the horse, or the horse before the cart, but you need to have something, they need to be working together in that sense of perceived value does affect price. And if the perceived value is up high and the price isn't there to back it up, then it creates a concern of going, wait, I perceive it as this, nice brand. It's like if iPhone was, $100, like you'd be weary of buying it, because that signals something of like, maybe it's not the quality I thought it was. So it's a statement of quality.
Yeah.
And if it resonates with you.
Right. And that kind of leads into to part of wanting to increase your perceived value for your brand is, how is your brand differentiating itself? What is different about your brand? Hypothetical, is it the materials you use in your product are different and more unique, right, than anything else on the market? It would be like if, all the other competitors use aluminum, we use titanium, right? That right there can have it separates you out, allows you to automatically stand outside from the crowd. And then with increased pricing, you're boosting that a little bit, or you're able to do that a little bit easier when you are automatically the only one in line raising your hand. Or maybe there's a whole batch and it's you and one other guy are stepping in front of the line. Now, how do you distinguish yourself even further from them? Because I think a lot of people, just like so many small businesses and brands, they want to fit in.
Yeah.
They go, this is where everyone's making money. This is what they want. I'm going to, my competitors are starting to sell this product line, or they're expanding into this service offering, or whatever it is. And I feel like that everyone's really gravitating towards. So they jump in line with everyone else. And I think, perceived value, probably one of the biggest attributors I see to perceived value of a brand is, how is it different? How is it standing out? And because that automatically it's going to be more visible, mentally, to people in the marketplace, because there's something different about it. And then when it comes down to it, it allows them the flexibility to capitalize on that and gain a strong audience, and thereby allowing them to charge more.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Apple has obviously innovation. They have value. They have materials. They also have a very high perceived value, right? I've born and raised on a Mac. I don't like PC. I don't like any of it. I just give me a Mac for all my devices.
Yeah.
And that probably will not change. And yet I will pay through the nose for Apple products. I don't mind, because of that perceived value I have with them.
Yeah.
Because they stand out. And it allows them to charge what they charge for their cell phone compared to a lot of the competitors at smaller price points.
Yeah.
But because they've always kind of led the pack in technology and innovation, so right there is that perceived value that's kind of coming along with it.
Yeah. And I feel like quality is one portion of it, but also just like you're saying, the story and the narrative of it could be certain materials, it could be certain attributes of the quality, but even that, it's like with Apple, it's like, okay, it's high quality materials. Yeah, it probably won't break, or it will hold its value longer, or I won't have to buy another phone in, so many years, or whatever it is. And that's actually a problem with them, is like they had to try to convince consumers to start trading up their phones because people weren't going through them as fast because they were holding up.
Yeah.
And I feel like that there's like you said, there's moments of distinction, but also differentiation. And that's what even like Nespresso, they did a great job, because when they came out, they were actually a high price point for, like, you had K-Cups, the Keurig, and Nespresso comes on the scene and they do, nicer materials, real metal, all these things, but their K-Cups, or their cups, were
pods. They're
pods.
called pods.
No, exactly. So
yeah, I have one.
So they call them pods, and then their pricing is that their frame of reference that they used was, they weren't comparing it to Keurig K-Cups. Their pods were compared to the price of a coffee at a coffee shop.
Yeah.
So they were price comparing on that versus comparing to a K-Cup. So they were shooting upward, and so that allowed them to increase their price per pod. Yeah. And then they also changed the interaction of it, you have to subscribe. You can, I think they have it in stores now, but at the beginning you could only subscribe to their pods, or you had to go to their storefronts.
Yeah, their pods actually, I mean, like for me, and that's, you mentioned that the association with, like, you look at a Keurig, right? Yeah. There are so many brands of teas, cocos, coffees, everything else for Keurig. Great argument to buy a Keurig, man. You have so much variety. Nespresso pods, we were given it as a gift, and it was amazing. But yeah, the pods were hard to find for Nespresso, but they partnered with Starbucks. And Starbucks makes a line of about 5 different, including an espresso. And then if you want to get different sized cups, they have 2 or 3, a Sumatra and a Verona. They have a couple of their known coffees that they've got in pod form, specifically for Nespresso, that you can buy at Target, you can buy at Albertsons, at most grocery stores. So that was a smart move, because now, I have an association with not some random, more unknown coffee brand, right? But Starbucks, one that I use and I frequent, and I have, already have as a consumer, a relationship with that brand. So there's familiarity, and I think it was a smart move.
So they charge higher than Keurig and K-Cups, and then the materials backed that, right? Even the pods, they're that aluminum versus plastic, all these different things, and the machine is heavier duty. And then, like we talked about now, is like they changed the actual vernacular of, cups to pods, of the actual comparison for price. So they framed it differently, and then also with the interaction between them of, oh no, we don't have all these random brands. The association is much different. It's only these specific ones, mainly Nespresso, and you have to buy it through this certain route. So that they're changing the whole interaction, so you can't compare it. So with all that being said, they were able to increase the perceived value of those, even though, yes, it could be higher quality, but the quality almost reinforces and backs up the perceived value. It's not completely reliant on that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's like, again, with cars, like you could have a luxury automaker that's like, it's still 4 wheels getting you around. And it's like, it's going to get you from point.
Sometimes a little bit faster than
sometimes
others,
a little faster and bumpier, but like it's still, it's like the functional value, it's still 4 wheels getting you from point A to point B. But you can have the nice ride or the economy ride. And it's like, that's where it's like a big jump for a lot of businesses, is going from, like you said, blending in and going, well, everyone else is doing this. This is what they're charging. This is how they're servicing. This is how they're phrasing it. And think like Nespresso, think like these other brands that are like, no, how do we actually change the point of reference, the framing of our business, so that we almost automatically stand out? Go from cups, K-Cups to pods.
Yeah. You brought me to mind even just a great example of increased perceived value, and even with the market demand, but like PS5s. I mean, they're everywhere now. You have no problem getting a PS5. Yeah. And now they're, Walmart's doing a $200 off right now on the the Pro, so it's still, but what it was 2-3 years ago when demand and everything else, he was like, people were paying $800-900 on eBay to get a hold of a PlayStation, like 2 and 3 times the actual value of that product. That was on, demand primarily drove that. But it's like that, when I think of like perceived value, that as far as like, I always think of it as like a balloon, like, perceived value is something you're just inflating with air, not hot air, but with air. The rubber balloon has a natural state of rest, right? And you can suck air out of it, and it almost squeezes up into this tight little thing. Or it's at rest, it's got air in it, but then you start expanding it, and those are all the things we're talking about. How to connect with an audience in a way that takes them through the different phases of brand, which we talked about in another episode, where go from the know it to the like it to the love it to the own it, right? Yeah. So perceived values, I think, very closely tied to that own it phase, that fourth phase of brand. And when they have that, when you've made that connection, and that allows you to, do so many things within your brand, not only increase your perceived value, but also take some risks and do things to differentiate yourself even more, that because you've gotten to that point where your perceived value is not going to nosedive over you trying something and it didn't work out or didn't pair well, because you've got that own fandom, right? Yeah. It may waver a little bit, but it's not going to that balloon's not going to get this big mass and then also just go down to nothing. Yeah. Unless it gets popped, but then that there's other things to do with that. That's Brad Pratt. That could be a whole bunch of things where we've seen brands fold. Eventually, there's nothing left of that balloon. Yeah,
and I think to your point, it's focusing on those people who do appreciate it, because they are the ones who they want to buy your product or pay for your service. They're willing to pay that price, and most likely they're willing to pay a premium for either more attention or more access, or just the product itself, to be able to reaffirm that self that inner narrative, that self identity. And so I think it's when you think of all these things with perceived value, how that relates to pricing. A good example is always, like, if I consult a business and they are at a point where it makes sense to increase their price, let's just say double your price. A lot of businesses will be like, oh man, I can't do that. Like, I'm going to lose half my clients. Yeah. I'll lose half my customers if I double my price. But then they soon realize is that they'll be in the exact same spot. If you double your price and you lose half your customers, you're gonna be making the same amount and be dealing with less headaches. So it's it really opens the mind to go, yes, I would be dealing with less people, less headaches, and actually dealing with people who are willing to pay that, and because they appreciate you and they appreciate what you do, they appreciate your product, and they're willing to pay a little more. And so it's all these things kind of mixed together, and they work together, but brand being that central component that helps, hit those emotional factors of that audience that you're really focusing on. Yeah.
Yeah. No, the good points. So again, your brand has a value. It has a intrinsic value. It has a value in and of itself, what you bring to marketplace. But then the utilizing your brand and the power of it and connecting with your audience is what's going to give you an increased perceived value, which ultimately is what it's all about. So, hey, thanks for checking in. And until next time, cheers.